phone rang and someone said, "Hey, I'm the music supervisor for NBC. We want you to write music for Smash." And I was like, "Go yourself, click." I thought it was a prank.
Welcome on the podcast, musical theatre composer and songwriter Drew Gasparini, who has written for musicals such as The Karate Kid musical and Skittles commercial, the Broadway musical. He's also written for NBC's series Smash. He's now bringing his new musical We Aren't Kids Anymore to the West End.
Hi, my name is Drew. Sometimes I wish that I was slightly more than human.
The Karate Kid is the big adaptation I'm working on. That's gearing for Broadway, and also whispers on the street it might be coming to London. Who knows? I called my dad after I got the job, and he goes, "Holy everybody knows that movie." Skittles decided, instead of buying an ad space to air on TV, we will just promote that we are doing a live Broadway show and you have to buy a ticket to see our commercial. Because we only had 5 weeks to write the show, to record the cast album, to orchestrate it for an orchestra, to get costumes, a set, and put it on a Broadway stage. I do not think anything like this exists in theater, period.
What has been your lowest moment in your career?
There was a show called Night Shift that I was writing for Warner Brothers.
Welcome on the podcast, Drew Gasparini. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great today. I'm tired because I'm still in New York time zone, but I'm here. I'm looking good. Look at me right now. I feel like I've never looked better in my entire life.
So if people don't know who you are, explain to them what you do.
Well, first of all, if you don't know who I am, slap on your wrist. My name is Drew Gasparini. I am a Broadway musical theater composer and songwriter for television and film and the stage. And I'm a performer as well. And I'm out here in the UK working on my latest musical called We Aren't Kids Anymore. And that's a bit of what I do, yeah.
Yeah. So before we talk about all that, let's go right back to the start. What were you like as a young child?
As a little child, chubby, round, short and round, just as round as I was tall, probably. I'm an Aries Taurus cusp, so I was just very driven and loud, and I was a creative from a very young age. I was one of those strange kids who knew exactly what he wanted to do by the time he was 5 years old. And that's exactly how I led my life. It made school very difficult for me because I already knew I wanted to be a songwriter. I was like, what the hell do I need algebra for if I'm going to be a songwriter? Honestly, what the hell do you need algebra for anyway? Can anybody answer that question? Anybody in the world? Anyway, so my mom was a music teacher. My dad was a very John Bonham, Led Zeppelin inspired drummer turned stockbroker. And there was 4 of us, 4 kids, and we all played music and we all sang and we all created in some capacity. It's just I was really blessed to be raised in such a creative and loud household. And it turned me into the monster I am today.
I relate to you there because I've always known I've wanted to be a TV presenter. So as a kid, I had this fictional radio station called Radio Fletcher, and I would do it from my bedroom. I would make my parents listen to it, and I would just play these songs and talk, and I would just make them listen to it.
You must have been unbearable.
Yeah. So you talk about wanting to be a songwriter. Was that musical theatre, or was it just a songwriter generally? And did you like musical theatre in your childhood?
Yeah, I always loved musical theater because the storytelling was something I really loved. And then, the songwriting part of it. I also I was raised by James Taylor and Elton John and Joni Mitchell and all these amazing songwriters. They were just playing in the house all the time. So I think I tried to go that route first, be the sad boy with his acoustic guitar and try to get laid. And none of that was working anyway. So I guess I just decided why don't I take the skill set of writing songs and apply my interest in storytelling to it. And it really just was a perfect marriage for me to get into musical theater writing, and I was quite young when I started doing theater. I was like 9 years old when I started doing theater, and yeah, it's just stuck with me ever since.
Yeah. So do you remember the first time where you went to the theatre and what did you see?
Yes, the first time I went to the theater, I saw Fiddler on the Roof, and it's a I'm sure everybody knows the musical Fiddler on the Roof, and my mom was in the cast, so it was kind of surreal that my first musical, my mom was like on stage, like in a costume, and she wasn't my mom, and I was like, whoa, you just like turned into a totally different human. And I loved the magic act of playing pretend. Like on stage, she wasn't my mom, and then when she walked off stage, my mom was there again, and that was a really interesting thing to watch at a young age in real time. So Fiddler on the Roof has kind of always stuck with me because of that.
Yeah. So you talk about doing like theatre. So were you performing throughout your childhood
Yeah, yeah,
on
all the
stage?
time. Yeah, I played American football for 1 year, and I got my ass kicked so hard. I immediately went to tap dancing. The quickest pivot to something else, and I went right to tap dancing. And again, I was just so young, and I just loved it. I think everybody should do theater at a young age because it's such a good way to find yourself, and it's such a good way to learn how to be a part of a team and also lead a team. And I really, really, way more than sports, I took to the environment of a theater community because there was so much love involved. You know, it wasn't like weird competition, toxic men chest bumping shit that happens in a lot of sporting worlds. It was just this really vulnerable place where boys, girls, anybody could just like be together and make something. And the world of pretend is something I am wildly impassioned about. So I loved it in that field.
So you talk about how you grew up doing theatre. So how do you think that influenced you being on the stage, being in these productions? How do you think that influenced you in later life doing writing musicals?
Um, there were some shows that like I did the Who's Tommy, and it's the Who. You know, it's not like Oklahoma. It's like Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey, and it's the Who. I remember seeing that show, and it didn't sound like a musical to me. It sounded like a rock concert. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, musicals can be anything. And that's really what got me into the creation of musicals and wanting to write my own was, oh, I could write something in my style. It doesn't have to sound like a musical. And that was appealing to me when I discovered the different genres within musical theater. A lot of people think musical theater is one sound, and it's not. It is like look at Hamilton, look at like all Next to Normal, these amazing rock and hip hop musicals. It's endless. So I've always liked the broad landscape of musical theater.
Yeah, so you talked about before how you started out as being like this singer songwriter. So talk me through
Mhm.
the journey from like leaving school to do songwriting to now ending up being a musical theatre songwriter and composer. What was that journey like?
Yeah, so when I lived in San Francisco, I was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area in California. And then I moved to LA, where a lot of the music industry exists. So this is the early 2000s, and I wanted to be John Mayer, I wanted to be Jason Mraz, I wanted to be Jack Johnson, I wanted to be those guys, Dave Matthews, and and I did end up going on the road and touring a lot, and it was fun and it was exhausting, and I wasn't getting what I thought I wanted out of that. So one day, my roommate and I bought a piano, and I just sat behind it, and I was like, I think I'm going to write a musical, and that's literally what I did. And I spent the next 3 months just putting a musical together, and I submitted it to this thing called the New York Musical Theater Festival, and they wrote a handwritten note back to me that said, "Your musical sucks." but but the songs are very good, and we encourage you to move to New York and get a taste of the industry out here for Broadway and musical theater. And I think it was like just a few weeks later, I was like, okay, I'd never been to New York in a real substantial way in my entire life. I didn't know anybody in New York. I literally just flew out there and lived on the first couch I could crash on until I got, the world under my feet again. And I was in love with New York and the excitement of the theater industry, the lights of Broadway. It really is alluring. But that was it. Someone just said, move to New York. And I was like, okay. It's all it took.
Yeah. You talked about like touring around that you did early on in your career. I think I found actually I was doing a bit of research yesterday. I was looking on your
Oh
YouTube
no.
channel, and I think I found some of like some tour vlogs from like years and years ago.
Oh, these must be almost 20 years old now. I mean, like that's so crazy. I was probably 21 or something. I just turned 39, so this was a good while ago. Now that you've told me this, I have to go on YouTube and find out how to take those down, don't I? That'd be embarrassing.
Oh yeah. And so, what was your first big success in the musical theatre industry? After saying the handwritten note saying your musical was dreadful, so what was that first big success?
The first big success where my name was like in a press release and it was like a big deal was there's a TV show that now has a very big cult following called Smash, and it's a TV show about the theater industry that Steven Spielberg produced, and I was hired to be a songwriter on season two. Which is weirdly the season it got canceled. I don't think it's my fault, but that is the season I was asked to write on. So me being attached to Smash was a very big boost in getting like fans and people buying my sheet music and people coming to check out what it is I do. And it made it very easy to go to Disney and go to Warner Brothers and go to Universal and say, I have an idea for a musical. I would like to adapt this, and I would like to. So that was the first. Smash was the first job that got my career kind of snowballing.
Yes, you talked about writing for the NBC musical drama series Smash. So
Yeah.
how did that come about? Like, how did they know where to find you, who you were, and then like how does that compare with the writing for a stage musical?
Oh, these are great questions. So, because it's all kind of an interesting story. Jeremy Jordan, who is a big Broadway name, he was cast on the show Smash, and he had sung a song of mine in the past, and he recommended me for the job. And it was completely out of oblivion for me. I actually remember music directing some out of town production of Spring Awakening, and my phone rang, and someone said, "Hey, I'm the music supervisor for NBC. We want you to write music for Smash." And I was like, "Go yourself." Click. I thought it was a prank. I didn't think it was real at all. And then they called and they were like, "I'm so sorry. No, no, we're being serious." And I fell to my knees and I started crying because it was like one of those opportunities that like you're praying for to get your career going. And so it was Jeremy Jordan who suggested me. They all liked my stuff. They all met, in some secret headquarters at NBC somewhere, and were like, "Who's going to be our writers?" And I was luckily one of the guys. But writing for the TV show was so hellish, truly, because you can't just like first of all you get about a day to write a song for them, less sometimes you just get several hours to write a song for them.
Wow.
And they would be like, so like one example I can give is they were like, so Catherine McPhee is going to be in a red dress and on a piano, so write a song for that. And I'm like, okay, but what is she saying? What is the song about? Like, it was so loose and crazy. And I feel like all of the writers, it was me and Pasek and Paul and Joe Iconis, they would ask us all to write the same song, and then they would pick one of ours. That's what I felt like was going on, and that's what I heard was going on. So it felt very weirdly competitive. And it's just so fast paced because it's TV, it has to get to air. And Broadway gets such a long and lush development period. So you get to do all these rewrites. And for TV, you got to write it, and just whatever pile of junk you wrote, that's what's going on TV. So, yeah, it was a really interesting gig.
Yeah. So was there any points in those early days where you thought of giving up?
Yeah. Like I would say every other day for the first 10 years. It was so hard, and I was so hungry, both literally and figuratively. I was so hungry for the dream, and I was so hungry because I was broke. And I would literally stand outside stage doors with like a CD of my demos and just wait for actors to come out. And I'd be like, "Hey, I'm a new composer and I loved you in this show. Would you want to sing my stuff one day?" And no one said yes. No one really paid attention to me. And then Jeremy Jordan did. And then another guy named Titus Burgess, who is another big star in America. And because they sang my songs, it really helped everything blossom. But before that happened, I was calling my parents every day and saying, I got to move home. I'm broke and this is way harder than I thought. And my dad and my mom were both very encouraging. They're like, yeah, but you're so good, don't you think? And I'm like, yeah, I do think. I just don't think everybody else thinks so. And they're like, just keep believing in yourself. Keep chasing that dream to keep it on brand for your show. It was cool to have parents support me through the times where I was like, I can't do this. But thank God I stuck with it.
Yeah. So, is it right that one of your early successes was your album "I Could Use a Drink," which was
Yeah.
released in 2013? So, what was that about, and how did it come about?
I could use a drink. I used to do these concerts at Joe's Pub, and for whatever reason, we just put on these really fun shows, and word of mouth got out about my concerts, and people would just like show up by the throngs to have this big party with me. It was so much fun. This is before I was too old to be drinking that late in the day. But it was so much fun to do these parties. And there was one gentleman who came to one of my concerts and said, "You need to record an album of your musical theater stuff." Because I'd recorded pop rock stuff a bunch, but yeah, he helped finance the whole thing, and we got in the studio. We asked a bunch of Broadway icons to sing the stuff, and the record came out. And I mean, millions of streams later, it is still one of the most popular musical theater albums out there, and I'm so grateful. Like honestly, I still can't believe it. I haven't listened to the album in a very very long time. I think I'd be embarrassed to, but it's thrilling to know that people are still listening to it and people are still singing the songs. It like makes me want to cry. It's gorgeous that people do that.
Yeah. And you talked about how you do performing as well as writing. So, which
Yeah.
one do you prefer? And why do you like both of them for different reasons?
I like the control of being the type of performer I am. I like being on a stage and I like holding court and I like just being expressive, like behind a piano. I think it's easier for me because usually when I am performing, I'm behind a piano. So I got this big protective tank in front of me. I'm not completely naked and vulnerable out there with just a skinny mic stand. I got this beast of a piano in front of me. So that always feels like a big safety mechanism. Ultimately, I get more satisfaction out of writing. Applause is a really good feeling, but when I'm alone in my room and I crack the puzzle that I've been trying to figure out with these lyrics or with these chords or whatever, when I figure it out, the applause I give myself is so much more rewarding because sometimes those moments take years to figure out. It could take an hour to figure out, but it could literally take years to figure out. So it's always like oh my God, my brain is capable. You kind of start feeling proud of your capabilities again. Yeah, but I love them both, but I would always choose writing.
Yeah, so you've written for everything from Broadway bound shows, cycles, and so many more. So, what does your creative process look like when you're starting out on a new project?
Always, it's like a blank piece of paper, no music, and I just write monologue. I try to get into the voice of the character I'm writing for and make sure that the lyrics match the vocabulary of this person and of the time period we're taking place in. And so I just monologue the emotion that needs to be in the song. And then I'll go back and I'll structure it into lyrics. And then music comes so easy for me. So that's always the last part because I can throw it together very fast. And even the worst version of that is still like good enough to show somebody. So I always stress about the lyrics first, then I go to music. Uh, yeah, that is basically especially for musical theater writing. When it's pop writing, I'll start with the music because the lyrics are so secondary. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
want it that way is a great example. Does anybody know what they're saying when they say I want it that way? What does it mean? They want it what way? What are they talking about? It's a great pop song, but the lyrics make no sense. You know what I mean? Or how about Alicia Keys? Concrete jungles where dreams are made of. That literally makes no sense. And yet it is a good, singable, anthemic lyric. Pop music is music driven, musical theater is lyric driven.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense. And then, like a number of musicals that you've written for
Yeah.
are adaptations of films or books. So, how much research goes into those and
Lots.
looking at the source material?
Yeah, lots. And it really depends. Like we're doing the Karate Kid is the big adaptation I'm working on. That's gearing for Broadway and also whispers on the street. It might be coming to London. Who knows? But we're not going to give anything away here, but I think there are whispers. I don't know. I'm always the last to know. Anyway, but so like when it came to that, I'm actually working with the guy who wrote the movie and created all the characters. And he is such a great, a fountain of resources when it comes to what are these characters going through? What are these characters thinking? So that's very helpful. When you're adapting from a novel, I actually prefer that because the audience doesn't know what the characters sound like. They haven't had a movie tell them what they sound like. So it's easier for me to like put my own stamp onto the material, when it's a novel. Like it's kind of a funny story I'm writing with Alex Brightman, and it's based off of an Ed Vizzini novel, and we've really put our own spin on it, and it's just such a joy to write. Everything's a joy, but for different reasons, of course.
Yeah. So you talk about Karate Kid, the musical that you're working on at the moment. So how did it feel when you were approached to write the music and lyrics for that?
It was another moment. I was just kind of like, no, thanks. I honestly, it was like it was all because of I Could Use a Drink, that album that you just mentioned. The producers of Karate Kid listened to it and they were like, we feel like there's something in what Drew sounds like that works for the Karate Kid. And I was in a moment in my career where I was getting really tired of seeing these big movie adaptations come to Broadway. And I was really trying to do more original work and stuff like that. But they called my agents for 6 months or something like that. It was months of trying to get me to say, yes, I'll write a song. I'll write a song to see if I'm even right for the job. I didn't even know. I was just saying no because I had no interest at the time. But then I talked to Robert Kamen, who wrote the movie. And he reminded me what a beautiful art piece the first movie is. And I went and rewatched it because I hadn't watched it since I was a kid. And I cried. It's like the most gorgeous story about a mentor and his student. And I loved seeing that relationship. And I was really driven by that. So it did take about 6 months. And then I started thinking about the time period. It was like 1984. And in my brain, I was like, 1984, that's Peter Gabriel. That's Phil Collins. That's like, that's that kind of. So I was really listening to like the Peter Gabriel sound, and I'm really excited about the Karate Kid score. Whatever people think the Karate Kid musical looks and sounds like, they have no idea how cool this show actually is. It's amazing. I'm so proud of it.
Yeah, like, did you feel a lot of pressure going into
Yes.
that because it's such a beloved film?
So I called my dad after I got the job, and he's like, "Wow, Drew, that's fantastic." And he goes, "Holy, everybody knows that movie." I was like, "Oh my God, you're right. It's like writing Star Wars the musical. Like everybody knows this movie. Even if you've never seen The Karate Kid, you've absolutely heard of The Karate Kid. You know what I mean?"
Yeah.
You know how the Beatles, you just feel like you were born and you just knew who the Beatles were because like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what The Karate Kid is for a lot of people, particularly in America. But because of the TV series Cobra Kai that was on Netflix and the new Karate Kid movie coming out, you realize it's really internationally beloved. So the pressure is right up here, but the closer we get to seeing it on Broadway or perhaps London, the pressure is less and less because I feel so sure that it's a hit.
Yeah, so like, what has the creation of that musical looked like? It had its premiere in a pre-Broadway tryout in 2022. So how has it developed to that point, and then how has it developed beyond then to further being staged elsewhere?
Totally. So we did that out of town in 2022. We did very, very well. We got these great reviews, and Broadway, trying to get a show from one step to Broadway is very difficult because it's really about the real estate, what theaters are available, and certain shows need certain number of seats in the audience. So like there's only a few theaters that work for certain shows, and there was just no theater available for us. And another year went by and another year went by, and then we finally just did another reading, and it re-excited the industry again. So we will see. It all just depends on the real estate. But hopefully we'll be getting into one of these bigger, more commercial theaters soon.
Yeah. So going back to like adaptations, when you're approached by a company like Universal or Warner Bros. To write a musical adaptation, what is behind your thoughts and your decision whether to do it or not?
Well, back when I was younger, there wasn't much of a decision. It was like, oh, I have to do this because that's a paycheck. And nowadays it's more like, okay, how much? Like I'm writing 11 musicals at once right now, and I
Wow.
don't think I could put another one on my plate, or I've already lost my hair. What else can I lose from up here? You know what I mean? Uh, but I got a wife, and we're trying to start a family, and there's so there is a bit of like I can be pickier and choosier about the projects I decide to take on. But when it comes to Warner Brothers and when it comes to Universal, I'm less inclined to go just to the big movie studios at this point in my career, because it hasn't proven to me personally to be a viable option to get my work on stage.
Yeah. So going from adaptations to a slightly different thing, you were approached to write the music for a musical about a Skittles commercial.
Yes.
What did you think when you were approached by
This was the greatest thing I've ever worked on in my life.
that?
So everybody knows what the Super Bowl is in America. It's the big American football, battle to the death of the two best teams. And the ad space for adverts, for commercials on air, they each cost, like, to get 30 seconds of ad space, it's like $6 or $7 million. So Skittles decided, instead of buying an ad space to air on TV, we will just promote that we are doing a live Broadway show and you have to buy a ticket to see our commercial. And that is what we did. We wrote a full hour-long musical all about how Skittles are great, but advertising is a nightmare. And we had Michael C. Hall, who plays Dexter on the TV show Dexter, come play the lead. And we sold out within seconds. And it was the most fun I have ever had writing anything. But it was also the most stress because we only had 5 weeks to write the show, to record the cast album, to orchestrate it for an orchestra, to get costumes, a set, and put it on a Broadway stage. It was only five
That's
weeks, and it was
insane.
it was like boot camp guerrilla theater. It was so crazy.
Yeah, I was watching some of it yesterday, and it was just
Yeah,
like I was like, "What is this show?"
that's exactly what a lot of people said. What is this show? But you know what I love? Everybody still sings the song. Like
Yeah.
this, people left the audience going, "What is that show?" And then they're like, "Advertising, it ruins everything." I'm like, "Well, you're singing it, so it did something right."
Yeah, I love the Dear Evan Hansen bit with
Yeah,
Michael with his been dead. That was great bit.
yeah, you're bringing so much joy to me right now just remembering this.
Yes, like did you ever expect it to become such a successful thing it did?
No,
Like I think it got
no.
more impressions than it would have ever got if it was actually on the Super Bowl.
I agree. In fact, I think there was a report that the Skittles sales went up like 12% after our publicity stunt. So it was like the whole thing was a big success, and it was so highly talked about within the industry of like the advertising industry that that's how I got my next few commercial gigs. I wrote one for Melissa McCarthy for Booking.com that was actually on air. But they wanted some big, lavish, like musical theater thing for her to sing, and I only got it because I was quote unquote the Skittles guy. So the Skittles thing was another career changer for me.
Yeah, so you talked about the Super Bowl commercial for Booking.com. So, like, how did it feel to have your song played on this big, one of the most popular TV events in the world with hundreds of millions of viewers?
It was, you think it's going to be weird, but like you're not watching it with all those people. Like you're in your home by yourself. So it was just like watching another commercial, to be very honest. Um, but it wasn't just the Super Bowl. What was great about that commercial is it also aired during the Oscars. It also aired during the Tony Awards and the March Madness of basketball tournaments, and it played forever. And it was really the gift that kept on giving for a while.
I hope you're enjoying the interview so far. I do have a lot more exciting guests lined up for you, so please do subscribe. But now it's time to get back to the interview with Drew. Do you ever worry about running ideas in terms of music and like tunes, and what gets you out of like a creative block?
I just wait a minute. The creative blocks are always there. They like honestly, they just show up. Sometimes they show up unannounced, but I just wait a bit because I feel like each of us we are either in states of ebb or flow, and those are just you got to be in either. You can't be in one for too long before ebb takes over. So I just really appreciate when I'm in flow state, and if I start to slow down and I'm like, wow, nothing's coming. I got no ideas. Nothing's really showing up. I don't beat myself up for it. I used to, like crazy, and I used to think something was broken in my head or something was wrong with me. But now I just lean into the silence for a while, and before I know it, I'm right back to where I was, and then back in flow state. So I think writer's block is a good thing at times. I don't even know if we should call it writer's block. You know, it's just like
Don't
sometimes
know.
our brain needs a rest or something.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So with musicals as well, you have a person that writes the book. So what is the collaboration between the book writer and you?
That really depends on who the book writer is. Alex Brightman, who is a very big Broadway actor, he played Beetlejuice and Dewey in School of Rock and a number of other things. He is my most collaborative writing partner, and we're best friends, so that really helps. We kind of finish each other's sentences. So we basically can sit down and be like, okay, so the story should just be like this, and then we can both attack it and share ideas, and it's comfortable because we know each other so well. With Robert Kamen, it was his first musical. He didn't even know how to write a musical. So even though he has all this experience writing screenplays, it doesn't always translate to musical theaters. So there was some like teaching involved, and that is both difficult but also really rewarding, because then you see his effort really grow, and he really wants to match everybody else's game because he knows he's in a different field. You know, most of these movie guys, they come in with such confidence to theater because they think movies are so big and theater's just this little thing. And then guaranteed 100% of the time, all of them are like, wow, theater is 4 billion times harder than writing movies. Like, and it is. I've seen everybody have that reaction. Theater is very hard.
Yeah. Um, so how does it feel the first time when you get to see your music on stage being performed by a cast? How is that feeling sitting in the audience?
It is nerve wracking. It's like right now we're in rehearsals for We Aren't Kids Anymore, the show that's coming out here. It's going to be at the Savoy on Monday, and I'm watching these amazing actors. They're so professional and they're so good at their jobs, at taking the material, interpreting it, and then performing it brilliantly. So when you watch people who are good at their jobs, you start losing the stress. You start going, oh, they got it. Like, I don't have to worry about my stuff sounding good. It sounds good. I don't have to worry about my jokes not landing. They're funny. Like, all the pieces work out when you have the right people. So luckily, in this case, we very much have the right people, and I've quite honestly been very blessed with the right people most times in my career, and it makes the sitting back in the audience a little fun. It's a release at times, and frankly, when I'm doing it, I certainly have a beer in my hand, so I'm having a really good time.
Yeah. So, like, how involved are you usually with a production of a show that you've wrote the music for?
If it's the premiere production, if it's the first time it's getting staged, I'm very involved, because typically there are rewrites being made until the curtain comes up. I mean, like, it really is a hands-on process. But once it's up and running, I'll only come by to check in every once in a while, and I'll basically forget that I even wrote the show until someone reminds me, hey, I just saw your show. It's like, oh my God, that's right, I did write that. But again, the theater takes such a long time, so your involvement lasts for like 5, 8, 10 years. You're just so in bed with this show. And then it's like sending a kid to college. It's like, oh, wow, that thing's going to go off and be an adult now. And I guess I'll move on to the next project. So I stay as involved as possible without getting in the director's hair, without letting the team, put their stamp on the show as well. It's a collaboration. So I don't want to get in anyone's way either. But yeah, I kind of love letting the show go and letting it be its own thing afterwards.
Yeah. On the other hand, like, how does it feel like to work on a show for months and months and then like it not be successful?
Heartbreaking. It's difficult, and you kind of never know what's going to resonate or what's going to land or what's going to work. It's such a big gamble either way, but I guess that's just the pill we all have to swallow. It's the high risk, high reward mentality. It's like we can't know if it's going to be good until we put it out there, but there's also the chance people might hate this thing like a lot, and that is devastating. Because it's never not all your work. It's never not every ounce of you that you're putting into something. So when it goes up there and it's a flop, Yeah, you have your tears, man. It's tough. It can be really tough. Season 2 of Smash, when Smash got canceled, that felt like a personal offense for a minute. You know what I mean? But it's not in your
Yeah.
control, so what can you do?
And I can imagine with that particularly, it was quite hard for you because it was so early on in your career.
Yeah, it was. And I really thought it was going to be, I thought like the phone was going to be ringing after that. It wasn't necessarily like that. Like it was still, I got an agent because of it. And my agent helped me get other jobs because of it. But it wasn't like, wow, you worked on that show? Well, do you want to do this? It wasn't like that. It just kind of put my name in the mix, but not necessarily getting the straight phone calls. But yeah, that was difficult because I was so young and I just had all these high hopes for it and hopes for myself. But c'est la vie. Everything happens for a reason. I'd rather be where I am now than still writing for Smash.
Yeah. So your musical, as you mentioned before, We Aren't Kids Anymore, is having its world premiere on the 28th of April at the
Yes,
West End Theatre, the Savoy Theatre. So if people don't know what that is about, explain to them what the show is
sure.
about.
So I have to kind of like wrap my head around how to explain this. This is I think the best way to like get people to appreciate what this show is it is about you. It is about you, Ethan. It's about you. And it's about the guy sitting next to you and the girl sitting next to that guy. It is the most human thing I've ever written. And because it all stemmed from a very autobiographical place, I was going through a lot with depression, addiction, and things of that nature that are, obviously not very fun or funny. But I was just writing out my truth and making it funny and also bearing my soul and finding the sadness. And when I start to look back at it, I guess a lot of my emotions were being split up into these 5 personalities, is what it kind of looked like. One person was getting affected by addiction, one was getting affected by a relationship and a career and his family. And it was all these elements. And so we divvied it up, and there are 5 characters in this show, and they're basically singing about the human plight of never knowing when you've made it to adulthood, because it's not a real thing. It's a made up thing. Other than our age, adulthood, we are all guessing. Society is a bunch of made up rules, money is a made up thing. And yes, we live under the construct of society, but like, why? you know, Growing up is a very peculiar thing. And even those who look like they have it together, those are the ones that really secretly don't have it all together. So, what this is really is a very nuanced portrayal of 5 humans who are going through 5 specific journeys, but in some capacity they are thread together. And it's each person in the cast is named Drew, and so it is one person, but it's divvied up into 5 people. And I kind of wrote this show just as a song cycle. Just here's a bunch of songs. But what Jake Smith and Chris Cumming and Lauren Hopkinson and our team here with We Aren't Kids Anymore have done is they've taken that concept of a song cycle and they've encouraged me to write a script and a book that threads this all together. And God, Ethan, I don't know how to say this without sounding like an absolute head. I do not think anything like this exists in theater, period. I don't think there's anything like this that bears the most honest, disgusting, hilarious versions of ourselves in its purest form. And it's not a character. It's not a character. Dylan Mulvaney is Dylan on the stage. Nigel Harmon is Nigel on the stage. They just happen to be called Drew for the sake of representing what is human. And believe me, I fought to change the name. I didn't want to hear my name 1,000 times in a show, but I like how metaphorically it's landed in this space. And I walked into rehearsal after they'd been rehearsing for a week, and I fell onto my ass. I was like, oh my God, we have a musical. And not only that, we have a musical that nobody is expecting. We have a musical that nobody's they're never gonna be prepared for something like this. Can I go further, Ethan? Can I go just one step further? The reason why this is an amazing show, after we do our presentation at the Savoy on Monday, on the 28th, when this does get a full production, those 5 characters, no matter when you see the show, you'll have to see it again and again, and you'll never get the same show twice because those 5 characters rotate who they are playing in the show. So with the combination of all 5 of them changing who they're playing, you will never see the same show twice. We have someone up there representing the trans community. We have someone up there representing, we have every age from the gamut of teens up to your 60s. So imagine someone who's 19 singing about their addiction. And then imagine someone who's in their 60s singing about their addiction. That is a very different show. Now imagine the 19-year-old singing about their mother. And now imagine the 60-year-old singing about their mother. It's a very different show, and it offers human experience through all those perspectives. So there's no way you can't see yourself up there, and there's no way you're going to see the same show twice if you were to come back again. And that's not a way to get people to buy more tickets. It's a way to say, we've created something that has not been done in musical theater before. And I love being a part of a team that is trying something for the first time. Like I said, high risk, high reward, and that is chasing the dream.
It is, yeah. It sounds so interesting, the show, and hearing you explain about it, I can tell how like invested you are. So, like, what has the journey been like from it being a song cycle back in 2019 to now getting its world premiere in just a few days?
Well, we were trying to do something like, present the song cycle as like a limited off-Broadway thing in New York, but then the pandemic hit. So we released the album. The album did very well, probably because the pandemic hit, and these are the types of songs that offer a lot of catharsis, and people found their way to those songs, thankfully. And this wonderful lad, Chris Cumming, who is our choreographer and he's our co-producer on this show, he hit up my agents and he said, I want to talk to Drew about developing this further. And he explained to me his initial idea, and then we've been cracking at this for 4 years because the idea just keeps getting richer and juicier and yummier, and oh my God. And it is so hard to explain to people because there is this ethereal element to the show that doesn't offer a through line. Like, I can't say, oh, it's about a guy who, goes to Mars and meets a girl and falls in love. It's not a through line hero's journey. It does feel like one of those shows you do have to kind of see to understand. And we're really hoping that when people see this on Monday, word of mouth gets out that you got to see this. This has to go. You have to see this on stage. So yeah, that was a bit of how we got here, and this is what I'm continuing. I hope that continues to happen.
Yeah. So you're currently in rehearsals for it.
Yes.
So what is your role?
In the rehearsal studio.
Oh wow. So what is your role during those rehearsals?
So I am making edits to the script as we go because certain lines are getting changed as we're writing, little lyrics here and there. But I also am doing the orchestrations and arrangements with Lauren Hopkinson, our music supervisor and director. She and I are co-arranging the show for the band and for the vocals. So I'm doing a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine. So why did you decide to put the show on in the UK first? What was behind that decision?
Really easy. They invited me. That's it. And they're interested. And I could show this to 100 people in America, and they'll be like, it doesn't have commercial appeal yet. And that's because it's not based on a big fat movie, or it's not based on some cult following thing. We are building something from the ground up. And if you look at the 5 actors who said yes to this, that speaks to the material. Dylan Mulvaney, Nigel Harmon, Cassius Hackworth, Melanie LeBerry, Amy Atkinson from Six. These are high-profile West End performers. And just based on listening to the material, they said yes. It would have been such an uphill climb to get agents to even send the material to their clients in America. It just would have been a headache. And out here, there's so much more gusto in trying to get something up off the ground. And in America, it's so capitalist-minded that they don't want to spend money on building something. And I know money is usually what the crux of all things are when it comes to the arts, but I feel like there are people who are looking at this going, that is worth spending the money on.
Yeah, and you talk about how like a lot of the theatre industry now is like based on existing IP and stuff.
Yeah.
Sounds very like my dad is actually composing a musical at the moment, and he always says that about how like or it's like adaptations or jukebox musicals.
Yeah.
So what do you think of the theatre industry currently? What's your opinion on it?
Well, I'm starting to see it kind of find its balance again. There's a lot of amazing, like this year in particular on Broadway, yes, there are adaptations, but they're not just you know, I don't want to throw any show under the bus, but there's a good example for me is like when I saw Pretty Woman, it looked like they pushed copy, paste. They just took the movie and then put songs in it somehow and put it on the show. Nothing is very different in the show. We are really adapting The Karate Kid. Death Becomes Her on Broadway is a real adaptation of that movie. They're putting their own theatrical spin on it. But there are also these beautiful shows like Benjamin Button on the West End. That's an adaptation, but I would see that again and again and again. I thought it was beautiful. Maybe Happy Ending. It's a very niche, it's like a little Pixar movie that no one ever heard of, and they just popped it on Broadway, and it's doing very well. So it's nice to see that there is a balance because there's always been adaptations and there's always been jukebox musicals, but there was a time when it was just that, and I'm glad to see more of a mix of it all now.
Yeah. So what is next for your show, for this musical?
For this musical, We Aren't Kids Anymore. We got our presentation on Monday, the 28th, at the Savoy Theater, 4 p.m. and 8 p.m. 8 p.m. is basically sold out. Wow, can you hear Dylan Mulvaney belting in there? Wow. Uh, the 8 p.m. is basically sold out. There are plenty of seats available for the 4 p.m. 4 p.m. on a Monday is a tough sell, apparently. Who knew? People are working, going to school, and if this goes out before Monday, I certainly want to say to all you teachers who are teaching students on Monday, suggest to your kids skip class, go to the 4 p.m. because they're going to learn way more by seeing a developing show than they are by going to musical theater history or tap class or whatever for one day. One day, teachers. I'm a college dropout. I did okay. Let them miss a class. Let them miss a class. You're not going to lose all your money. Don't worry, I promise. So I'm just encouraging young people to come see it at that 4 o'clock. But ultimately, the goal after this is to raise the rest of the money that we need and then find either the next step of development, which would hopefully be an out-of-town run or a commercial production of it somewhere. But we don't need a big theater, but we would like a West End theater. And I think we could be one of those sneaky indie darlings that kind of becomes a phenomenon like Six or Benjamin Button or something like that. I think we have that potential. So I hope people sniff that potential out on Monday and talk to our producers and see how they can get involved.
Yeah, so can you tell us about any other future projects that you're working on right now?
Yeah, Alex Brightman and I are working on an adaptation of a novel called It's Kind of a Funny Story. It's a comedy about depression. And it's a it's one of my favorite things that I've worked on. And we just got a new producer on it that optioned the show, and it looks like we're heading for an off-Broadway production in the nearish future. And Alex Brightman and I, once again, we are writing a show called Captain. That is our working title. And I guess the loose way to explain it is kind of the origin story of Captain Hook. Yeah, so that's what we're doing as a musical. And what else? Besides the other stuff I'm doing rewrites on, we still got The Karate Kid. I've got a new novel coming out, and I have a musical called The Unthought Known, and like 8 other musicals that I'm in the midst of ripping my hair out with. So yeah, there's a lot coming up, but those are the ones at the forefront.
Yeah, so just a last few quick fire questions for you because I know you'll have to go back to rehearsal soon.
Yeah, that's
right. What has been your highest moment in your career?
Highest moment in my career? Probably this. I can't believe I'm here in London, and the Savoy is a legendary theater, and I can't believe I was invited to do this. I can't believe the success we've already had with this piece, and I'm over the moon. I think We Aren't Kids Anymore is an absolute career high for me.
Yeah. On the other side, what has been your lowest moment in your career?
There was a show called Night Shift that I was writing for Warner Brothers, and we worked on it for 6 years, and we had an out-of-town theater ready to go, and we were going to go to Broadway after that. Ron Howard was a co-producer with Warner Brothers. It was the most amazing stacked cast. We had Adrienne Warren, who played Tina out here, and Tina Turner, and now she's in the last 5 years on Broadway. And we had Kathleen Marshall directing. It was just like legendary. And then the producers are like, we're not going to do it. It's done. We're not doing it now.
Oh,
And it was just like, why did we work for 6 years? It was the saddest.
yeah.
That still makes me so sad to think about it. It was because it was
That
good.
must be heartbreaking.
Yeah, and we had everything set up to go, and then all of a sudden they said no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could write a musical about any random, unlikely subject, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. Shoe cobbling.
Okay. We're not going to explore any more else on that.
Let's go with it. Shoe cobbling. Yeah.
Yeah, shoe cobbling. Where's your favourite place to write?
My childhood home.
What is your favourite musical?
My favorite musical is A Chorus Line.
What's your favourite thing about your job? And what's your least favourite?
Favorite thing about my job is I typically get to work from home, and when I'm not, I'm traveling, and that's really awesome. My least favorite part is the fickleness of others. So it's really tough when you are excited and the rest of the team is excited, and it just takes one person to be like, I'm not into this anymore, for the entire thing to go away. And it's a turnoff, and it's lousy. And a lot of the times it's because someone's not getting paid enough. And we all want to get paid, but that's not why you get into the arts, period. So let's let the enthusiasm drive us until the paycheck comes, because it will. I dread fickle behavior. Dread it.
And two last final questions. What advice would you give to someone who wants to become a musical theatre composer?
I would say try not to think the only way to do it is by getting figured out on TikTok, which is what a lot of people are trying to do, and getting hired to write an adaptation. Even when you're not getting paid. The sickness about being a writer is, this is so important to me, even if it's not important to anybody yet. So the yet is very important, because it'll keep you driving, because it will be important to other people one day.
Yeah, that's some great advice. And what advice would you give to someone who is wanting to chase their dream generally?
To do it, period. What makes me so sad is people who give up on the dream for reasons that are very vapid. Like, my boyfriend doesn't think I should do it. Oh, does he now? Like, why is that his decision? If you want to do it, this is your dream, not his. And if this is what you want your future to look like, what a yucky thing that you don't have the support to follow your dream. I think the only way to do it, especially when you're scared, most people are scared to follow the dream. You just have to do it. And if you don't, the longer you wait, the more afraid you'll be. So take advantage of being young and ignorant, because you're only getting older and more afraid.
Yeah, some great advice there. So thank you again for coming on today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy rehearsal schedule to do this. I really, really do appreciate it.
What a pleasure, Ethan. Thanks for talking to me, dude.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Drew. The links to his socials, work and tickets to his new musical on Monday are in the description. I will be back for another interview in a month, but for now, goodbye.